AI in operations, that's our biggest problem right now. We've got infrastructures of people who've been doing the job for 15, 20, 30 years. Some of them are old guys like me, and they're used to doing things the old way. And for them to trust that an AI can actually do something for them that they could do themselves, or they're used to doing themselves, that's a hard nut.
Dave, how are you?
I'm doing well, Chad. How are you? Nice to see you.
Likewise, good to see you again. Hey, today, thank you for making time for us. Would like to chat about two things. One, the whole buzz about AI and how is it relevant for the infrastructure, and some misconceptions around that, and some opportunities around that. But second, I want to talk about a topic that is dear and close to your heart, DCIM, DCIM. The word that has been documented and carved in every analyst report for the past, I'm dating you, how many years?
Well, 14 years, yeah.
Fantastic.
I think the first research I wrote on was 2009. So
awesome. So let's begin. Like we have a lot of customers and a lot of prospects have been talking about AI, and a lot of our competitors have been talking about AI, and everybody's buzzing about AI. AI is going to change everything and all that. So what are you hearing in the industry? What are you seeing? We keep going through those cycles of hype, of Bitcoin, blockchain, cloud. Everything stabilizes and becomes a business opportunity and all that. What are your thoughts about AI? What are you seeing? What are you fielding? Questions and all that.
I guess there's two ways to look at it. I've talked to customers for years about AI, and in most cases they were looking at it from a very specific point of view. Is there some AI capability I can put into my network monitoring, or an AI capability I can put into my development process? Or it was always about, I guess, tactical, practical applications of AI. The people who had the most pain in most cases that I talked to, this kind of links AI with DCIM, with the poor folks running the infrastructure. They didn't have all the new tools. They didn't have all the cool things. Weren't working on new projects necessarily. They were making the business live with what they had. And they've started thinking about AI from a, conceptual idea that, can I use AI to automate the redundant operations I have today? Because right now I've got server admins, I got storage admins, I got network admins, every time I got a problem or I get an alert from somewhere in the network, somebody's scrambling to figure out what to do. Can I introduce some level of AI that can automate that, or make that process easier, or at least reduce it down to I just need to focus people on the things where they really need to focus, and use AI to solve everything else. Now that conceptually has been the mantra for the last 10 years or so. And a lot of vendors talk about AI and they throw all these cool buzzwords out there, but the reality, not happening. The last 3 or 4 years, we're starting to hear about some call it AI ops, but it's this idea that, can we take the whole basis of operations, ITSM, ITAM, ITOM, all the ITOMs, and apply some intelligence to those things, and essentially automate the whole back-end operation of our infrastructure. That's, I think, where enterprises want to go. In most cases, they aren't there, but that's where I think the market is for AI, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, we were having similar discussions with analysts, with customers, and with investors and all that. It's like, what is your AI play? Your mission is to make critical infrastructure think. What does it look like? And I recently was fortunate to be invited to DCW. Bill Clayman had a session and gave me a portion of that, and part of that I covered AI and what is required for AI, and look through the hype. And I said, well, listen, is AI relevant for you, and why is it relevant? And the answer is yes, absolutely yes. But how does that materialize? How do you take advantage of that? And we look at it simplistically. We say, you have various levels of insight that you can share within an organization, right? You have descriptive. I know what's happening in my environment. A UPS went offline. Why did it go offline? Well, the battery was not charged. So the diagnostic, why did that happen? Well, the health wasn't good. Predictive. How can I predict it? That this from happening again? Well, you can monitor the sensors for that. Prescriptive. How can the system tell me that? Well, you can set up thresholds and so on and so forth. And then cognitive is the ability to feed that into a model, into algorithms that can automatically detect and manage that. So is AI relevant? I posed the question, and I had mixed answers. And I said, well, the way we look at it simplistically, if you take a journey, right? Take a trip from LA to San Francisco, several hundred miles of a journey. And so you have 4 means of transportation, all are viable pieces of technology in their days. Take one is your carriage on a horse, environmentally safe, very romantic. You enjoy the scenery to the utmost. It's effective. It gets you there probably in a couple of weeks. But it is in its heydays, pun intended. It was the state of the art, right? And that's a couple of hundred years ago. But that's akin to running your infrastructure on Excel, right? And this is the problem with that. The second, piece of technology, if you forward 50, 60 years ahead, you take a Chevy Malibu or one of the traditional cars, faster, 5 hours, air conditioned. You have room to carry 4 or 5 people. You have trunk space, and the problem with that is you have to pay up front. You have a lot of computers in it, but are disconnected. And I think this is what you were alluding to around various network teams and all that. A lot of insight is within that car, but in order to talk to it or understand it, you need to decipher the codes that come out, and you need to talk to professional services or take it to the dealership to pay money for it. The total cost of ownership is hidden on top of the actual cost, is also the hidden cost of you spending the time owning the problem, caring, feeding for those systems, and linking things together. Now, the third piece of technology is a Tesla. I had a problem with my Volvo XC90. I took it to the dealership. $2,500 later, they analyzed 3 error codes. Like, you have a module that went offline. Although they talk about having remote hands and ability to diagnose, wasn't there. My neighbor has a Tesla. He gets updates continuously. Yeah. He can play games. The quality of life for him, he focuses on other things that I don't have to worry. I have to worry about. And that's where the evolution of the car industry have been. And that's the next gen, what we call the next gen DSIM. So the traditional car is your traditional disparate systems within an organization, your traditional DSIMs that you own, and you own the problems, and you have to care and feed. A Tesla is a next gen system. But the last and fourth piece of technology is a Hyperloop. Hyperloop can take you from LA to San Francisco in 27 minutes. Right? So that you need a different infrastructure. Now, is AI relevant? AI is relevant if we explain AI and explained it as Shakespeare. If you feed a large language model all the work of Shakespeare and say, create a sonnet for the first 10 years of Shakespeare's work, it will understand the context, it will transform that and generate a sonnet or a poem for you. So the Hyperloop example is an example of AI. Is it relevant? You need the right infrastructure, right? So the infrastructure what we talk about is, for AI to be relevant for you, you need a monitoring pipeline. You need continuous feed of data from various functional groups that traditionally, as you alluded to, is separated. And then you need, what do you do with that if you tell an AI model, generate something for me? You need the control.
Yeah.
You need the ability to go ahead.
I was going to say that. I mean, I like the storyline and how things are progressing, and I'm thinking I'm trying to relate it back to the fundamental problem today within large infrastructures. And it's almost, I guess, the problem AI has had for years, especially within IT itself, is the problem your Tesla friend has solved. It took years for Tesla to get to the point in their life, since like a dozen plus years now they've been building cars, where the consumer actually trusted that those downloads worked. And now they rely on them. So that cultural shift, that trust factor, is the main driver of their success. AI and operations, that's our biggest problem right now. We've got infrastructures of people who've been doing the job for 15, 20, 30 years. Some of them are old guys like me, and they're used to doing things the old way. And for them to trust that an AI can actually do something for them that they could do themselves, or they're used to doing themselves, that's a hard nut. I mean, a good example is, even in the virtualization world years ago, one of the first AIs that came out was a model that would say, we can go in and look at all your virtual systems and decide which ones are running efficiently or not efficiently, or over allocated or under allocated, and essentially shut down what you don't need, spin up the ones you do need, and will make it a much more efficient operation. It was proven a number of times that it worked like a charm and didn't sell worth a damn, because a lot of IT shops didn't trust that some software is be shutting down their systems without their control. So getting that, I guess, getting AI in operations to the point where they can trust that the alerts are true and the resolutions are true and things are trustworthy, the proof points, I guess. Once we get those, I think it'll take off like a rocket.
I totally agree, and we've seen that in various industries and various verticals. Like I remember, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, my customer data is the treasure. I will not put it anywhere else except in my own systems and all that. Now every CRM is cloud-based. Your ERP, your financial numbers, absolutely, it has to be hidden behind firewalls and all that. Everything is SaaS right now, NetSuite, Workday, you name it, Dynamics, and so on and so forth. The industry is changing, and you're right. The cultural aspect is key in breaking that misconception. And I refer to it as security through obscurity. And I have these discussions, repeatedly with customers when we talk about, hey, why should I trust a SaaS platform? But we start having that discussion around security through obscurity. How many PDUs are configured correctly? How many PDUs that have extremely valuable workloads, possibly supercomputers, that are still configured with SNMP version 1 with public strings, and they're not on the right network? How do you gain visibility? Manual operations on that and manually trying to check all that is a moot point. A couple of weeks ago, we had a vendor talk to us about, they have a client with 8,000 PDUs. They need to do an emergency upgrade for PDUs and UPSs. 8,000. They flew people around. It costs a fortune. It costs a fortune, but it's also a risk and disruption for a major infrastructure. 8,000 PDUs. Think about the infrastructure that is relying on that, right? And if a bad actor takes advantage of that, and security is not just bad actors. It could be a firmware that has a bug that could take workloads down. Or shuts down. So there are issues from or risks internal and external for sure. But for AI to be relevant, we believe that you need foundational pieces. You need the monitoring pipeline from the various areas and various streams. You need the control pipeline, the ability to do things with outlet control, firmware management, configuration management, and so on and so forth. But as well as you need, if you're able to do it, doesn't mean that you should. You need granular access control policies. That if Dave is allowed to touch one asset, Dave can only see one asset, can only do something with one asset, not with all the assets within that product category. And then with that, how do you train models? Are you going to send everything to public? Large models, large language models, or privacy is key. Some of the data has to be anonymized. Some of the data cannot leave your premises. The various verticals, NERCSIP, for example, IP addresses cannot leave the physical infrastructure. And lastly, understanding the context, right? If I want to update a UPS, but the UPS is running a ventilator in an OR room, well, we should understand that it is, there are dependent assets on it and it cannot be updated right now. So these are foundational pieces for AI to be relevant. And with AI becomes, okay, so in stages, series of co-pilots around optimization, around power utilization, efficiency, carbon impact, and so on and so forth. So back to your point, how do we create those trust points? How do we create those validation points?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's two aspects here, I think. One is what you keep talking about is I guess I call it the operational efficiencies you get from the AI, you can get. Your example of the 8,000 PDUs. I mean, I'm thinking of 0-day issues. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons from an operational point of view, AI makes sense. But the other aspect is once we start to do those things and once we can get those efficiencies, it becomes something that's, I guess, there's two ways to look at AI. One is what's it provide from an IT point of view, and what's it provide from a business value point of view. And once you get that trust point, now you're talking about using AI for things like audit and compliance, and there's a whole bunch of other things at the C level where AI can provide value and provide a level of reporting that people have never seen before.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about a lot internally here to my team and externally to customers and to investors, say AI has a lot of benefits, but probably 90% of the value is in the prescriptive analytics.
Yeah.
Understanding what I have and having the system tell me what I need to do. AI is the cherry on top. So for example, prescriptive could be firmware management. I have new firmware. I need to update. I have 1 million PDUs. Click update. You're done. I need to roll back. I have the system automatically understands what I have. The system tells me I need to put some blanking panels to maximize airflow to reduce the temperature because I can direct the airflow. That affects the PUE and so on and so forth. That's prescriptive. I don't need AI for that. We look at AI as more as a first initial step, as a series of co-pilots, enhancing the capability of the operator by providing them the analytics that is already there, synthesizing it, and enable them to do factors. How do I, like if you think about transcoding or transcribing manuals, right? Take all the manuals that you have. How do I configure this PDU? Instead of you looking at the documentation, it guides you through that. Or go configure this PDU for me, right? That's even better because you have the control pipeline with the configuration management, right? That is where you can say, I am an operator and I'm saying I need to configure my 8,000 PDUs at the highest level of encryption and the highest level of authentication with SNMP v3. Go find them, validate that is done, and remove all these roles. Right?
Yeah.
That is where AI is relevant because now it can understands how to talk to those PDUs with the right protocol, understands how to validate the work is done, and understands the cascading effect of that if there's anything that needs to be done. That is where AI is most impactful. So with that, let's tie these two things together. How does DSIM come to play? Like, what are your opinions? Like, you've been, I've been.
I think,
and this is maybe a stretch, but I consider myself a personal friend of yours because we've spoken to each other so many times over the years. I love chatting with you. I'm picking your brain on this, but DSIM has been dear to your heart, and your research has guided us throughout the years. And I remember our chats in every conference, Gartner conference, that we grabbed and sometime and chatted about what we're doing and the industry and all that, and you shared your insights. So how does DSIM come to play with AI?
I think DSIM's problem over the years has been it's been owned by people within a physical infrastructure, and they saw it as a way to control what they could kick, their own data center, and that was it. The new DSIM, I think, in fact, when we even talk about relative to AI, is the one that looks at the infrastructure as something that's not on premises, but it's wherever it needs to be. It could be on premises, it could be next door, it could be down the street, it could be next country, it could be in the cloud. It's whatever's tied together to my infrastructure to make my business work. The next generation DSIM, I think, has to look at all those different components and how all those things tie together. And frankly, when you get to AI that says, okay, show me some predictive or prescriptive analytics around this one application, it knows every piece of the puzzle that impacts that application, no matter where it is. So DSIM, the new DSIM has to start speaking at that level. And I think we're slowly starting to get there. But until we do, most people managing their infrastructures as a standalone unit, just within one data center versus multiple. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I think the other piece of the puzzle, which I'm starting to hear from people, is not just can I discover everything I have, which most people can't, but if I could, what am I consuming? Because now I'm getting pressure from the board to talk about not just power consumption, but environmental friendliness and what am I complying with any of these new regulations out there? How can I create reports that show exactly what my infrastructure is and what it's consuming and what I've been doing over the last 6 months to a year for the business, and show me some value in what we're doing. So that becomes a piece of DCIM as well, a reporting piece. But you have to have a good, solid discovery process and I guess a book of state to create those kind of reports. And to be honest, once you have that basis, now you've got a private model or private data we can build a large language model around. It's a lot more secure, and it could be very fascinating what you could do with it over time if people trusted it.
Yeah, and the idea here is to build that trust over time. And for us, what we're hearing from our customers and what we're seeing in the industry, you have the what you touched upon right now, 4 areas of pressure. One, the talent shortage, and people are overworked, right? How do you enable the teams via automation, via the right insight, and increase their capacity and effectiveness, and enable them to manage that infrastructure? And that has been affected a lot by edge. Edge is 50% of the infrastructure right now. Like in early 2000, most of the infrastructure was deployed on on-prem data centers. Now, 50% of infrastructure is in edge. How do you manage remote edge locations with all the challenges around geographical reach and so on and so forth, but as well as when you have an edge workload, think about smart ag or smart city or all that. There's no longer a facility team or an IT team. It's a workload that is running, and it's as strong as its weakest link. If anything breaks, the whole thing breaks, and then it is not functional. So the industry has been moving towards how can I get that complete visibility across the various layers, the network layer, the IT layer, the facility layer, which is fantastic. Another area that you touched upon, the third one, is the compliance side. Both from carbon impact, you have regulations now coming out to measure that and treat it like a tax. It's going to be an operating expense line item very, very soon. So, and how do you enable the operators to look at it by workload perspective, right? And finally, security. Security through obscurity doesn't work anymore. Right, things are inside my data center. Your data center could have holes, and what has been happening. We've been in this industry in the software side for the past 10 years, but prior to that, managing 22 data centers for almost half a decade, actually more. The industry has been changing, has been shifting towards we want that. So which is fantastic to see. The way we see DSIM and how it plays role with AI, and I'm going to use it simplistically and tackle one of the misconceptions actually around data centers. People think about data centers as a big block of concrete with static infrastructure in it. Yeah. I can measure my PUE over the past 12 months. I can feel good about it. PUE 1 or 2 or 3, depending on how you measure it, and I can look at this metrics, right? We look at the data center as a living organism. And I was talking to my 6-year-old, and she was like, "Daddy, what do you do?" And I said, "Remember a trip? We took a trip to the Science Center in California, and there was a big 40 or 50 feet robot that explained how the human body works and reaches a state of equilibrium or homeostasis, where it gathers input from every part of your body and knows, hey, I need to perspire, I need to increase oxygen to this organ because I am, you're doing pull-ups and so on and so forth. That continuous state of equilibrium is required by ingesting data. And I told her, we are that nervous system. A DCIM, in our opinion, is the nervous system that collects the data and information and synthesizes it, analyzing it, and feed it to the brain. The brain can be the operator, the brain can be AI, or can be a combination of that. So that's how we look at DSIM and this is why, when we talk about DCIM and discovery and multi-protocol and digital twin and all the beautiful buzzwords, it comes down to what insight are you providing the end user to make it the right decision. The second piece of that, I was talking to a good friend of mine, Dean Nelson, and Bill Clayman actually about this, around how people use metrics. And Dean has been championing power capacity effectiveness, where he talks about co-locations have been, talking about they ran out of capacity, but customers actually use a fraction of what they committed to. So there's a lot of capacity that is wasted that we can reuse. And to your point, when you're looking at optimizing a data center or an infrastructure, it's a continuous loop. What is your PoE, regardless how accurately you can measure it, PoE 1, PoE 2, PoE 3, depending on, UPS versus PDUs versus IT consuming resources. Then you look at the power capacity effectiveness, how much power you're actually using. And then you look at the compute effectiveness. I'm using it, but every server that is running or every resource that is running, is it utilized?
Yeah.
And what is the carbon impact for each one of them? A 7-year-old server versus a 2-year-old server versus a optimized virtual server has different carbon impact, right? And that continuously evolves. And that's why we look at a data center is a living organism. It's not a static object. And you need that nervous system to pull all that information to enable that insight. And this is, I think this is how we look at it. AI would be the brain.
Yeah.
And Adesum is the nervous system that feeds all that information to the brain.
And that, I like that, because the fundamental difference between this and the traditional DCIM is traditional DCIM was basically a static snapshot of your infrastructure. It might be updated.
Correct. Yeah.
When you need it to. It could be when new installs happen, but not very often. We're talking for live infrastructure. You're talking not real time, but near real time. You've got to continually monitor what's going on in order to make any smart decisions.
And that's where we see the industry is going. That's where on daily basis we're having these discussions where customers are teams are tired. Teams are tired of dealing with static information. It's like, I need to do an annual audit to figure out what I have in my data center. Why?
You're losing it. Yeah.
Why?
Why bother?
The clothing industry figured that out 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's
like
other verticals have figured that out. There are RFID solutions at the rack unit level that solve that problem for $2 a rack unit for 10 years. It is what you actually spoke to me about this before. Is you said when people are busy, they miss the forest from the trees, right? When you're busy, you're busy. You're not able to step back and say, how do I? So how do we solve that problem? DSIM and AI, how do we, how should we guide our customers, or how should we guide people to think about this? Your words of wisdom.
Thanks.
No pressure.
I think your idea before of creating I'm breaking it out into pieces here. Create a template or create a series of templates. It says, for the network team, here's how we can monitor, and here's how we can automate network actions to reduce those the physical interactions that people have to make. This is how we can automate your network. Here's how we can automate storage management. Here's how we can automate server management. Here's how we can automate facilities itself. But by breaking it into individual dashboards or models or whatever, you can address each of those individual teams, because right now most people running this infrastructure as a whole, it's not one person, it's a bunch of groups, some who talk to each other, some who don't. But if you can break it up so that, say, the facilities team can do what they need to do, and you can automate as much as possible to reduce their workload, and then do the same thing for let's say the data center team, maybe the same thing for remote or the IoT team. If all these things can tie together, that's how you're designing the system now. Eventually, so essentially, I've got an infrastructure that I may run it independently initially until I get comfortable with it, and then I can start integrating things together. I think that's how you tackle the marketplace, unless it's a brand new company, and then you start from top down. But that's pretty rare nowadays.
Yeah. So basically, you build the trust by getting the wins in the various functional groups.
Because most of them have existing processes in place, and they don't want to rip and replace. They want to do it slowly, or we wait for everybody to retire and train the new kids.
No, I think honestly, I think our industry, there has to be a lot of pride in our industry. People work so hard in data centers, and and they keep the lights on. You think about during the pandemic, what kept the economy, what kept people alive and entertained and the economy going is that group, is the group of individuals that
It's that group,
the
and the good news
infrastructure.
is they did it well, and the bad news is they did it great. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a guy not too long ago in a hospital chain. He's the IT guy, and he said, we had so much stuff going on just with COVID and people working from home. He said, we were just trying to keep the lights on. He goes, but at the same time, we're still trying to grow the business. So I had a couple of teams in different hospital groups who were getting into IoT and sensors, and they wanted to try some new stuff, and I didn't have the time to do it. We just let them do their thing. This one group brought in some simple sensors into the hospital for different things. One was monitoring when people wash their hands at different wash stations at the patient's rooms. They wanted to track that for insurance purposes. Another group was thinking, well, let's put sensors on the beds for motion, for moisture. And if a patient, based on our parameters, they move, say, at 2 o'clock in the morning, or it gets moisture out of the parameter range with it at 2 or 3 in the morning, we can dispatch somebody to that room automatically. So they started putting in place like that to test them out. And he goes, and the good news is it worked. And the bad news is it really worked well. Because suddenly nurses were doing a lot less running around and monitoring everybody on all the floors. They were just watching the monitoring stations, and they were reacting to real problems versus going around to see if there's any problems. The bad news was the IT teams deployed this across multiple hospitals and multiple floors. We had literally tens of thousands of sensors, which we knew nothing about. And suddenly I had to manage them all.
And imagine the amount of data that
Oh, yeah.
And this is where you start saying, is my IT team built to care and feed for time series database that could grow to trillions of lines? We're working with a customer right now. They're looking at maintaining data on a per minute basis for 1 million sensors, right? That's trillions of records. Imagine managing all that inside your data center, and your IT team having the cost to manage all that, right? This is why, SaaS, but that's a different tangent. I can get to that, but for us, as I go back and focus on the topic of discussion with AI and with DSIM, or digital infrastructure management, if you want to expand it to more aspects, which still applies, we look at data centers as a living organism. We look at infrastructure, edge, and any smart infrastructure, any connected infrastructure as a living organism. It has to be monitored, analyzed, and be able to be managed with secure access. And if you have that central nervous system that enables you to collect that data, and insert buzzwords here, digital twin, yay, and all that. It's the capability of connecting to the sensors, understanding what they are, mapping them, and feeding that intelligence insight to either human beings or systems to be able to do various use cases or actions. With that, and AI has a huge potential for our industry. Phenomenal potential. The beginning for it would be a series of co-pilots. But for you to take advantage of that as a customer or as a consumer, you need to have 5 things in mind. You need to be able to collect the data. You need to be able to control the infrastructure that you're working with. You need to do it in a secure manner with granular access control policy. You need to make sure that your data is analyzed and built into model with privacy at the core, not an afterthought. And lastly, you need to understand the context of how assets are interdependent on each other. If you have these components in place, then AI becomes very, very powerful for you. If you're riding a carriage, riding a legacy, I'm not going to mention a brand, but legacy automobile, then AI is less relevant for you because you can't really take advantage of that. And if you do, you're doing it at a fractional level. A data center, an infrastructure is a human being, is a living organism, not a human being. And it needs to be in a continuous and consistent state of equilibrium or homeostasis. And that's how we think about it. And hopefully that helps people look at their infrastructure and say, what do I have? Am I riding a carriage, a car, a Tesla, or I want a Hyperloop? Especially if you're in a race.
Yeah, I like it. It's I think it's the only way we can move forward, really. We start getting infrastructures that are more and more distributed. They're going to continue to get more and more distributed, even small companies. We've got to manage them. We got to control them, and you can't do it with people at all the sites and stuff. It's just not possible. Yeah, I like the model of especially if it's with consistent data gathering, consistent data storage, and controls over multiple sites. Suddenly I can build a model where I can do predictive analytics. I can ask questions. What's the impact if I bring down this application on the following weekends, on all the other applications, the downstream effects on the business itself. And suddenly I'm making intelligent business decisions based on my DCIM input.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Easy.
Go ahead.
Easy to do, right?
Easy, yeah. Click the easy button. Phenomenal as always to chat with you. Hopefully we'll do more often and of these fire chats, and hopefully people find this useful and intelligent. Or one would be useful. One would be fantastic. Have a wonderful day, and we'll chat later.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Take care.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.